Ahoy, and welcome. This is Admiral. Finishing up my top 6 potential civilizations for South America with the top 3. My final choice will have a historical overview, but not a design sketch here, as I will save that for a full civ build with a mod in yet another video. I know. See the earlier video for a semi-in-depth, but still partial look at the first 3 choices, and the context of the list generally. As I've said, I think we need a couple of these civs in ranked.
And I'm one of those too, right?
And others I'd like to see at least represented with some editor units for modders and scenario designers, or possibly as unranked civilizations in a new mode to cover some edge cases.
What civ did you forget in America?
In Peru, the Incas.
Okay.
Except logically, if you're going to have the Incas, you have to have the people they fought.
That said, let's roll right into it. Third place goes to the Koyas, as the Inca called them, from the Quechua word for south, and after their incorporation into the Inca Empire, constituting the large southern portion of the empire called Koyasuyu, and overlapping very heavily with the ethnic identity of Aymaras, which is an alternative designation. Koya was also a specific Aymara kingdom, but in conjunction with the southern designation, the Inca used that name as a blanket term to refer to all the Aymara adjacent groups in the region. This would be an umbrella civilization covering the people of that area, known as the Altiplano, Andean Plateau, or Koyao throughout the AoE2 timeframe. The Koyao corresponds to much of modern Bolivia, but stretching into other modern countries and constituting the world's second largest high plateau after the Tibetan Plateau, and containing the world's highest large lake, Titicaca. From approximately 400 to 1000 AD, the dominant polity of this area was Tiwanaku, which a Koya civ could partially represent. Tiwanaku may not have been an empire, as there's limited evidence of militarism, but it did wield major technological, cultural, and religious influence, and featured advanced agricultural engineering, and impressive stone monuments, and especially temples, which continued to be sites of pilgrimage into later eras. One of the statues already available for American civilizations in the scenario editor is based on a statue found at the Kalasasaya Temple in Tiwanaku. The Koyao was never a particularly hospitable environment, and even the agricultural expertise of old Tiwanaku could not insulate them from the centuries-long drought that led to their decline and dispersal that would later partially recrystallize in the region as various Aymara kingdoms, who relied more on pastoralism to palliate their precipitation problems. The later Koyas or Aymaras were less centralized, but still a regional power until their integration into the Inca Empire by a process of diplomacy and conquest, after which they still maintained a strong identity that has continued into modern times. For AoE2 purposes, I envision the Koyas or Aymaras as a defensive and monk civilization. The Koyas were known for their wealth of llama herds, so a primary economic bonus might be that farms spawn a llama or guanaco when built, and perhaps are auto-herded to the nearest town center for convenience. Alternatively, they could have a pasture variant with these animals. Their team bonus would be that meat sources, that is huntable and herdable animals, last 8% longer, representative of meat preservation techniques used to create jerky, which English word derives from charqui, the Quechua word for dried meat.
Yum, 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 yum.
The Aymaras also specialized in the bolas or ajo, a short-range thrown cord with weights used to restrain a target, and also used by the Mapuches and Incas, as mentioned in the earlier video. The role of the ajo thrower as a new regional unit could be to slow down and lightly damage enemies at short range. I'm a little hesitant to expand the roster of debuff abilities and think they ought to be used sparingly, but immobilization or entanglement was literally the main purpose of the bolas, and the mechanic was already introduced in the last base game DLC. So it makes some sense to use it here, although the effect size should be fairly small. Or it might alternatively slow down the attack rate rather than the movement speed of enemy targets. As a Koya specific ability, their ajo throwers might be able to hunt and herd as well, as the bolas was used for that for centuries before and after the Spanish conquest, and this would synergize with their llama or guanaco spawns from farms. As a secondary eco bonus, they would have extremely cheap mining camps that could research the forging line of technologies, as a reference to huayrachinas or tocochimbos, wind-powered furnaces peppered throughout pre-Columbian Bolivia, mainly used to refine silver from the abundant mines in the area. And I will once again take this opportunity to ask for silver mine variants or skins. As mentioned, Tiwanaku was known for its large and very precise stonework, which the Inca Pachacuri sent his master builders to study and imitate, and the later Aymaras were notable for their hilltop forts or pucaras. To represent both the masterful masonry of Tiwanaku and the ubiquitous Aymara pucara, one Koya unique technology would be called Taipicala, from Aymara, meaning stone in the center, and referring to Tiwanaku. This would add 4 melee armor to stone buildings, and allow them to put that stone in the center of some buildings by installing towers into their town centers, gates, and monasteries at half the normal price of a tower. In practice, that would look like this, also representative of their practice, along with others in areas of ample ruins, of sometimes building atop those ruins or reusing the stone from them. The Koyas would also have a significant monk focus. The Inca claimed some of their legitimacy from their control over Tiwanaku, which they believed was a holy place, with some legends saying that the creator deity Huiracocha rose from Lake Titicaca and formed humans in Tiwanaku, and the site was an important center of pilgrimage from ancient to colonial times. Koya monks could receive gold whenever they convert an enemy unit, and as a niche bonus for team games, I also like the flavor of them receiving an additional 20% of the value of relics held by your team, reflective of pilgrimage and gold and silver offerings deposited in Lake Titicaca or brought to Tiwanaku. The Koya unique unit would be the Chuya from Aymara, meaning detached, suggesting scouts or raiders operating in small groups split from the main force, and would appear as a fast-moving infantry unit with a club or mace, similar to an Eagle Warrior but with lower pierce armor, or Woad Raider with lower attack, but costing only food and wood, making them a sustainable option for goldless late-game raiding, and like an infantry version of the Magyar Hussar. Along with a related type of warriors called Kishwa, roughly unencumbered in Aymara, they were described by Cieza de Leon as light warriors who ran like deer, and frequently fought as skirmishers and raiders in highland conflicts. The Koyas could appear in the existing Inca campaign, as well as a historical scenario focused on pre-Inca battles between the Aymara kingdoms, and the rise of the specific Koya kingdom as the most powerful Aymara realm under Sapana. In second place is the Wari Empire of Peru and northern Bolivia, a fairly clear prototype for the Inca and contemporaries of Tiwanaku. In many ways, they laid the foundation for the later Inca Empire, in some cases very literally. The Wari were prolific builders of well-planned cities, terraces, roads, and aqueducts, often constructed regardless of inconvenient terrain features. While we often consider these Andean civilizations in the context of their technological deficits, their mastery and extensive scope of advanced terraforming of otherwise inhospitable environments was frankly a superpower, and even a point of superiority relative to their contemporaries in the Old World. A bonus to reflect their aptitude for construction would be that secondary builders and repairers work 80% faster. As a quick refresher, a single builder or repairer works at a set rate, but any secondary or additional villagers have a penalty, whereby they work at 1/3 and 1/2 that rate for building and repairing, respectively. For the Wari, a lone builder would work at the same rate as that of a generic civilization, but each secondary builder would work almost 2/3 as quickly as the first builder, or almost as quickly as 2 secondary builders from a generic civilization, with a similar case for repairers. If that sounds a little crazy, don't worry, it's not as bad as it seems. For purposes of castle building, here's a graph of how Wari villagers would match up against generic, treadmill crane, Spanish, and Sicilian villagers. Spanish build faster with 1 or 2 villagers, and Wari catch up by the 3rd. Sicilians will build castles faster with up to 5 villagers, but Wari tie by the 6th. They can technically outpace them after that, but by that time the absolute time difference is very small. And of course, Sicilians can construct town centers faster with any number of villagers.
Never go in against a Sicilian!
Overall, it's more rewarding or less punishing to rush down buildings with multiple villagers, with 2 Wadi villagers having the same efficiency as 2 vills with treadmill crane, and 3 having about the same as Spanish builders, with a higher ceiling after that, but balanced by diminishing absolute returns. Teamwork makes the dream work, and in a more organic way than an aura boost for additional villagers. Like the Spanish, the efficiency boost would be capped at 20% for wonders, and they would miss treadmill crane. The main Wadi economic bonus would be that their farms are 2x2 tiles instead of the typical 3x3, making them more efficient and defensible. This is a triple nod to their mastery of terrace farming and irrigation, preservation technologies such as freeze drying to create chuño, allowing them to preserve more of what they harvested, and highly productive, low-maintenance crops that could thrive in marginal highland environments, such as the lowly potato.
Potatoes. Boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew.
You can't spell Wadi without war, and their belligerent activities and militant expansionism are better attested than Tiwanaku, and their successors more muddled. Hence why, in contrast to Tiwanaku, I'm not representing them primarily as a geographical successor people or ethnic group, though they might also pass as such for campaign purposes, as the warlike Huancas and Chancas particularly. One bonus to aid their aggressive ambitions would be to have barracks and siege workshops discounted by 75 wood each. The Wadi unique unit could be the Kuchuna Levy, an axe-wielding infantry unit that is affected by villager upgrades, and that can collect wood, but at a slower base rate. It might also be able to build palisades and/or rams, although I don't want to overload the unit, and those abilities could instead be saved for a different unique unit. Wadi citizens served rotations of military service and corvée labor called mita in Quechua, and well documented under the later Inca. One of the Wadi unique technologies could be called Wadi Nyan, referring to their road system, and the effect of this would be to allow villagers and wheeled units to move 20% faster, but I would have them miss handcart as well as caravan. The Wadi as such lack documented material for a full campaign, although they could appear in a historical battle scenario, or as their partial descendants and partial conquerors, the Huancas and Chancas, during Inca times. I think it's a good rule of thumb for most civilizations to have a campaign, but given that many of the original Civs still don't have one, and the recent choice to add the Jurchens and Kitanguts but not tell their stories, I don't think that this lack is a sufficient basis to exclude the Wari Empire, which fits right into the medieval core of AoE2's timeframe, and which was the most powerful empire in South America at the time, and until the Inca Empire. So I think a historical battle or two would suffice. Before we get to the top choice, a quick word on campaign possibilities for South America. In addition to civilization-specific campaigns for candidates with high documentation, such as the Mapuches, and an alternative mode featuring lesser documented but real events, there's a lot of potential in greatly expanding the scope of the existing Inca campaign to something like a grand campaign covering the rise and fall of the Inca Empire, and featuring playable missions as some of the other civilizations we've mentioned here, as everyone on this list, except for the Chibchas, interacted directly with the Inca. This could even go so far as to include the Neo-Inca state at Vilcabamba, which if nothing else I've always thought would be a fun scenario, and including the Inca's limited use of horses and Spanish weapons. My gold medal for the top South American civilization goes to Chimor, or the Chimu. Chimhu, you might ask? Chimor, or the Chimu Kingdom, and subsequently Empire, was a civilization along the north coast of Peru, and partial heirs of the Moche people, who taken together created some of the most impressive pottery, crafts, and technically advanced metalwork ever discovered anywhere in North or South America. The Chimu, as such, first appeared as a distinct culture around 900 AD. According to oral traditions, their first king, Takainamo, and his court arrived at the Moche Valley from across the sea on a fleet of balsa rafts, with a mandate to govern the local people, and they founded the desert city of Chanchan, which would become the largest adobe city in the world. Takainamo and his 9 successors, only 3 of whom are named, conquered many of the nearby valleys until they had created the most powerful coastal empire in the Americas, covering over 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles of coastline. At its height, the capital of Chanchan boasted massive walls and elite complexes, and hosted thousands of artisans specializing in various crafts and occupations, from fishing and construction to weaving and ceramic manufacture, and of course metallurgy. Eventually they came to clash with the ascendant Inca Empire, depicted in the last scenario of the Pachacuri campaign, where the Chimu are the final bosses and capstone conquest of the Inca Empire. After their conquest, the Inca embarked on a rigorous dismantling of the Chimu state and erasure of their identity. More or less standard practice for those who did not submit peacefully, but carried to great lengths with the Chimu especially. Ironically, we actually have more of some types of information about the older Moche, because many of their artifacts were long preserved within their desert tombs, including the richest burial ever found in the Americas. Whereas Chimu artifacts were thoroughly looted by the Inca, who took enormous quantities of gold and other plunder, and the famous artisans and goldsmiths of Chan Chan were taken to work in Cuzco. Even the Chimu navy that controlled the spondylus trade with Ecuador, among other things, was commandeered and given to another famous maritime people, the Chinchas, either as a reward for or condition of their prompt acceptance of Inca dominion, and to prevent the Chimu from contacting unconquered peoples by sea. As I've said, I won't talk design here, since I'll have another video with a full build for them, including a mod, as usual. A South American DLC that did not include the Chimu would be a swing and a miss. The Chimu are what I would call the most well-rounded candidate, boasting a high-tech level for the region, having high longevity within the time frame, notable military and economic power, obvious gameplay strengths including something of a water focus, and having enough known about their pre-Columbian activities for at least a short campaign. Whether or not we are correct in predicting a South American DLC, including the Chimu based on the anticipated animal editions, I can at least offer my mod interpretation of them soon. So that's my list, obviously very focused on the Andes and nearby regions, as that area best fulfills my criteria. But of course I'd love to have partial representation for other regions of South America, and especially the Amazon and northeastern coast. And obviously there are arguments to be made to include others beyond geographical coverage, and feel free to do so in the comments. That's my list, let me know what you think about the choices, design sketches, and so forth. And I might make a very abbreviated video with summary cards for all 6 choices after the full Chimu build and mod. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. This has been me assessing available and admirably accomplished aspiring Andean area additions. Till next time.